Take flights all over to find you, girl. It's you and me, it's against the world. 42 now, take a sip. With you, I'll take a trip. Oh, baby, flip the script. Won't you come right now? Are you down to be my own body? I'ma hold you down like nobody. I'ma make you learn. Watch me make a move.
All right, in about 1 minute, we'll be starting our next session here at 2:30. Please come join us for the five-person panel. Thank you.
Kurdish.
Oh, that's even.
Yeah.
We are on? Okay. Welcome. Welcome to the panel on Renaissance of EDA startups. My name is Moshe Zalcberg. I'm CEO of Veriest, and I'm a partner at Silicon Catalyst. And we are here to discuss what I think that many of you are seeing, a new trend of new EDA startups, many of them leveraging AI, that for many years we didn't see in the industry. They are very veterans of the EDA industry here. And that's quite new. Jay from Griffin this morning talking about the view from Wall Street said that 92% of the EDA spent goes to the three big players. Still, the 8% might be big. And increasingly, there are startups trying to go after this chunk of money and interest and attention. But for many years, these startups were not there. Customers were not looking into it. But even more than that, VCs were not funding such startups. For many reasons, it's a very concentrated market, as I just said. The exit strategy gets complicated. The market might not be big enough, and et cetera. But that has been changing lately with a big, increasing number of EDA startups presenting here at DAC, at the exhibition, at the different panels and presentations. So we are here to try to understand this trend. The very fact that the panel we have one entrepreneur of one of such startups. They will introduce themselves in a second. We have one entrepreneur. We have someone from a VP from Cadence representing the established players, and two VCs, which is, I think on its own, is something new at DAC. The very fact that we have VCs, in the past, VCs were not part of the discussion because, everything was Cadence, Synopsys, and Siemens Mentor, and ANSYS, maybe. But the very fact we have VCs on the stage is refreshing, and it's welcome. And so welcome to all of you, and welcome to the panel. And with that, I would like our panelists to introduce themselves and say a couple of words about their background and what connects them to this very topic. Irfan, let's start with you.
Sounds good. Hey, everybody. My name is Irfan. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Voltai. The background is I was a researcher at Stanford, worked under Professor Andrew Ng, and figured out that in order to solve the AI problem, we actually need to solve the semiconductor and the compute problem first. That's when I went to work at this company called Sabre Systems, which I'm pretty sure a lot of you are familiar with. And that's when my passion and love for AI and, I guess, semiconductors all came together. And now at Voltai, we work on building, the world's smartest systems for electronics and semiconductor engineers to make them a lot more productive.
Kanu?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kanu Gulati. I'm a partner at Khosla Ventures. This is a multi-stage venture fund. We focus on seed and Series A primarily, but also have an opportunity fund, $3 billion, the fund that we are investing out of today. I focus on enterprise applications that are leveraging advances in AI, including robotics. But my background started in EDA. I did my PhD in speeding up EDA algorithms on a variety of hardware, such as NVIDIA GPUs, and then Intel hardware, and also custom ICs. And I think the connection now is, and we'll talk more, but there is a change in the paradigm now that we can now look at why opportunities in startups exist, and that's why I'm here. So very happy to be here.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brian Schechter. I'm a partner at Primary Ventures. I spend a lot of my time focusing on the intersection of AI and compute, which is an area that is obviously of the utmost importance in the context of the AI revolution. I sit on the board of a company called Etch, which is building an accelerator for inference on transformer models. I've probably looked at over 20 EDA startups at pre-seed and seed over the past 12 months, so definitely see this trend emerging. I think it's an extremely complex market for startups to navigate. There's a lot of promise, but also a lot of peril, and so I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, and Vinod.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vinod Kariat. I manage the custom products group at Cadence, and I think, Moshe said I'm establishment at this, and I think he meant he stacked by age. He wanted to so you know who the youngest person is. So why am I on this panel? Mostly because Moshe asked me to be on this, or asked Nimish at Cadence. My connection, of course, AI, we see it as very pervasive and changing the landscape, and we'll talk more about that. Also, I've been involved with many startups in EDA. I came from a startup. I was acquired into Cadence and didn't leave. But in the many years I spent at Cadence, I've actually acquired and integrated multiple startups into Cadence. And in fact, we are integrating 2 of them right now, which we did over the last couple of years in my business group. So I've seen both sides of the equation. I've also seen what it takes for a startup to transition from the startup stage into a mainstream EDA company. So that's my background.
So I'm going to open with a question to the whole panel, but Vinod, starting with you, because you've been, as you said, you've been there, done that. You've been, maybe contrary to what I said, you've been involved in an EDA startup 20 years ago.
Yes.
Okay, but I think you have been following the market and seeing that it was, I guess it is still difficult to start up an EDA venture. So how do you see why it is, particularly harder for EDA startups to launch, and what may be changing now, if you think something is changing now?
Okay. So I think if you think back, we said 20 years ago, right? There were a lot of EDA startups back then. And a lot of it had to do with, I think, simply with market dynamics in a way. Back then, you could have a small cap IPO, you could have a company with a very focused product, and then you could get, say 10 million in revenues, 10 million upfront revenues, you have 100 million in market cap, you could go IPO. Those days disappeared quite a while ago, right? So that's one factor that made it more challenging, that's market. The second thing, since from around 2005, 2006, EDA consolidated into essentially 3 big companies who were providing full flow, and very often our customer buying behavior changed. They used to go to startups and say, okay, we'll buy from you. And I've seen this transition very clearly. It changed to our customers coming to us and saying, look, that startup is doing this particular technology. This guy's doing that technology. Why don't you do it or acquire them? So I think that kind of changed the market dynamic. Now, clearly, I think the reason there is more startup activity now. I don't know all the reasons, but one of them is I think there's a promise of new technology. So of course, that's interesting for all of us, exciting to see some technology change. And I think that opens opportunities for technology and maybe for solving problems that haven't been solved or are hard to solve. Some problems that are well solved, you probably don't want to use AI for that. So maybe there's opportunity to solve those. But I think my other distinguished panelists probably have more to contribute as to why they see this, especially the VCs over here, why they see this as an emerging opportunity rather than me.
So Brian, what do you think? Why now?
Well, I mean, I think the meta trend, of course, is that there's this platform shift taking place with AI right now. and that hardware is the foundation of that transformation. And that hardware requires more and more complex chips and more complex technology to build those chips. I think we're in a situation where, like a lot of places in tech, the incumbents are moving very quickly. It's not at all like you could say that Cadence is asleep at the wheel when it comes to AI. And yet, what early stage VCs are interested in is where are there possibilities for, in really the improbable to actually happen. So a few years ago, no one would have thought that Google's search dominance would be threatened. The moats were so intense. And yet today, we see that being challenged. And so when I look at Cadence and when I look at a startup, I'm like, how in the world are you going to be able to compete with incumbents like this because of all sorts of layers, from the integrations that they have with the fabs to the integrations between the different product lines to just the mind share they have. The list goes on and on. We are in the business of betting on highly improbable bets with really huge prizes. And so I think that, one, there's a new potential to bring AI to how chips are designed that would be sort of AI native, that would not be born within a Cadence or a Synopsys. And there are a lot of problems that customers experience in relationship to the incumbents right now, whether it's integration timelines or cost, or still a lot of things not actually delivering on the ease of use that a lot of, especially young engineers, expect from the tooling that they use. So there's a lot of problems, I think, to go after, and a huge, huge prize if you can do it. But any which way you look, it's daunting, to say the least.
So can you, actually I'm connected here, I don't need to use this one. So just to build on that, but to add a twist, I think Brian was talking about competing, replacing, disrupting. Is, generally speaking, what's going on, and is the right path to compete or to complement or to do something different?
Yeah, the framework we're working in, we covered, like, yes, there's a new technology. Design rules are getting more complicated. So if you can use the advancements in AI, in reasoning, et cetera, to improve it. But I also think with agents that can now take actions, it's not just automating the tool portion anymore, or it's also the action that the human has to do that can now maybe, it's just like, in software engineering, Cursor and, GitHub's Copilot, and now Devin, and think of that paradigm changing also onto EDA design, right? So it's not just the tooling that we are thinking about automating, but also the task that the design engineer or the verification engineer or the physical design engineer is doing, which is not fun, which is maybe more routine, but today is not captured by the tool. So there is more opportunity. And the highest level framework, I think, as VCs we operate is, hey, Airbnb came out not because one of the Hiltons or the Marriott continued to invent. They do invent in their own ways, but there is opportunity to think of a new business model maybe. And because of the shift in technology, now is the time that you can think of that. So that's a highest level framework. But yes, we are pretty excited to think if there is an asymmetrical upside. As VCs, we lose 1 times our money, but if it works, it could be 10 or 100x, and that's the chase. So we're pretty aware of all the challenges, but we still want to take these bets because of the new paradigm.
So Irfan, you said you're coming from the AI side. I was mentioning earlier today, we had a session about different startups, 7 different startups presenting, and more or less half of them are coming from the EDA and learning AI, and the other half is coming from the AI and learning EDA. So what made you, with everything that you could do with AI, to focus on EDA with all the challenges we discussed in the past, at least?
Totally. I think the approach that we're thinking about how to go about building the Voltaire team is that, I don't know if you've heard the DeepMind story around AlphaFold, where AlphaFold by DeepMind would have not happened without someone like John Jumper, which he won the Nobel Prize. And then the way that they went about building the team was they brought in the world's best biologists and people who are expert in proteins, and then they brought in world's best ML scientists and engineers and then put them in one room. So the bet that we have here is Let's bring the world's best experts in building these very complex processes and chips, but also bring in the folks who are very focused on, I guess, just building the best AI tools and then have them in one place. And I think that this is so far has turned out to work very well. And the reason that a lot of these folks are interested in this domain is that there are companies that are going to be changing nations. And I think in the semiconductor industry, we have seen that over and over. TSMC changed Taiwan, Samsung changed Korea. And the intersection of AI and semiconductors, I think it's possible to build a company that could actually change the geopolitics of how things could work. And that is very appealing to some of the smartest people that I've met to come and work on this kind of problem.
Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean that this can change geopolitics?
I think, as you guys know, like electronics and semiconductors is very much like the bedrock for how technology is working out right now. And when the chip shortage happened, a lot of like devices would getting shipped without functionalities. And now one might argue we're already at a war, a cyber war or a tariff war with China over a country like Taiwan. And this is important. This is an industry that matters to everybody and to many industries in the world, including rockets, consumer electronics, cars, medical devices. It's powering everything. So if you have an AI that could design the chip that powers the AI to unblock all of these industries, that could be country-defining technology.
Okay, let's move on into, it's still a very concentrated market. Okay, 92%, as we discussed. The marketplace is very conservative. Maybe for a good reason. It's a very risky business. You talked about TSMC. Mask sets are very expensive. So how as newcomers, innovative, how do you get into a market that it has this kind of built-in barriers? So,
totally. I think that the bottleneck is not the processes. The bottleneck is not the manufacturing. The bottleneck is not the tools. These things have scaled with time. They have gotten more complex. But the thing that has not really scaled with the processes and the tools and all the manufacturing is the human behind the tools. Just going off of Kanu's point, where now this is the first time that we have this promise of reasoning models really capturing human intuition and human experience. And that could actually scale with complexity, where previously complexity would be something disadvantaged for humans. So once you have this new paradigm of thinking about what could be built where you can automate human intelligence, there's a lot of opportunities that you don't have to necessarily fight with the incumbents. There's a lot of white space that you could complement them, build on top of their tools, and bring them more money, and also just create new opportunities that was previously just simply impossible. So we will work with incumbents, not compete with them.
So, Kanu, what do you advise the companies you're working with or will work with to navigate this, again, very concentrated market?
Again, I don't think we should look at the problem as just the design tools and that as a market size. You should look at the market as all of chip design, which includes the design specs, the designers themselves, the verification engineers, the physical design engineers. And that, I don't think, is a small market. I think if there are different aspects of the humans plus the tools that you can automate, I think what startups have to figure out is what is the shape and product and SLA with that product that you can offer and validate and provide, deliver. But the other challenge, again, it's a known challenge is, you mentioned AlphaFold. One of the key advantages they had was they were able to collect all of the protein folding data in one place. That was a huge advantage. It wasn't AI alone, AI plus the data. And that, for incumbents, is an advantage. For startups, is a challenge. But if they can come up with smart, creative ways, maybe using synthetic data, maybe using previously existing data which nobody is using, being smart about it, I think there's a lot of avenues in trying to automate more and more of the task that needs to be done with the combination of tools and humans. So I do think there is a lot of opportunity, and you have to be smart in figuring out the initial wedge and why you deserve the right to then win more and more of the end-to-end flow.
So Brian, I want to address this from a different perspective. It's basically the same question, but from the different end of the process. Exit strategy. One of the things that usually is said about EDA startups is that you're going to sell. You have two people to sell to. Okay, and that was in the past a barrier to innovation in EDA. As a VC, and maybe that's the reason, one of the reasons VCs would not be investing into that. As a VC, how do you see that?
Yeah, so I think one thing I just want to add to the conversation in the context of why part of the interest is that AI today has found the most killer use case in the context of supporting software engineers through code automation, agents supporting the writing of code, et cetera. And there's this hunt to try to apply that same kind of leverage to EDA. And so most of the EDA startups that I've looked at are in one way or another trying to layer on that kind of, whether it's code gen or agentic capabilities, onto some component of the chip design process. They're all trying to, as Kanu was just saying, fit in, complement in one way, and then eventually eat into it more and more. And it's worth saying that while there's a ton of activity, relatively speaking, in the context of EDA, you could count them with all of our fingers here, for sure. Legal tech, which is a much smaller market, maybe half the people in this room would be required to count the number of startups going after that space. So while there is activity, relatively speaking, it's still small. And there are no breakouts right now beyond Series A's. And I think that we'll need to see things move to Series B, Series C for people to get more conviction that this really is an investable category, in part because of your question. And so I think there's a lot of curiosity, a lot of seed stage checks being written, but there's not yet a full-on rush to back the next EDA, Synopsys or Cadence, because most VCs are not looking even anymore for a $500 million or $1 billion acquisition, but rather they want to become the next Cadence of, $80 billion, $90 billion market cap kind of company. And so you have to, and that can be a 20-year journey, but you have to believe that there's some way that you can, start small, occupy more and more components of your customer's experience of designing chips, and then at some point you can actually be a competitor. And that's what, when you really ask the founders what they want to do, it's, yeah, eventually I want to go replace Cadence. Most of them say in some version or another, even though they have very specific niches they want to go after in the beginning.
So, we at Veriest, we are talking to a lot of these companies and leveraging their technology, and we just published last week a kind of a landscape map of the different players, and it's refreshing, it's new, because there are 20, 30, 40, okay, but when I show to people in other industries, you talk about legal tech or whatever, they have a very dense landscape map that you can hardly see the logos, right? So it is, but it's still not hundreds. I understand that. I may come back to this later, but to take your last famous words, all of them want to replace Cadence. Vinod, that's how you see them?
Well, so that's always true whenever if you're going to go pitch to a VC, you're not going to say, I want an exit for $100 million. I mean, this was true even back when that was possible. So I don't think that's anything new to make that pitch, because if you don't want to make that pitch, you're going to go to an angel investor, you're going to self-fund. But we generally see, we're happy to see more activity, right? We need to get more talent into the industry. Startups are a great way to do that. We've continued to work with startups. We have a connections program. We let people in, work with us. We work with all sorts of companies, and we've acquired a lot of them. So, it's good for us to see a rich ecosystem and startups. Now, for a moment, if I may, I'll also, you were talking about the different applications and so on. When we look at AI, we're looking at it in multiple levels, just like self-driving cars or something. So level one, we think about as optimization AI, which is applying AI to algorithms we do today for primary EDA. That's already happening. It's ML-based technologies. Level 2, conversational LLMs assist maybe documentation help, etc. Level 3, go do some reasoning, so maybe some code generation with complex reasoning. Level 4, now it gets interesting. You start doing agentic AI where you have some of these AI capabilities working with tools and integrating with them using conventional algorithms, and eventually maybe go to full autonomy where you can say, oh, I can tell this agent to generate something with this spec, and it'll automatically generate it. So especially as you go to the right side of the spectrum, there is a lot of opportunity for innovation, and you are not necessarily solving the problems that we are solving today. You are solving the problems that design companies are solving, and they're very challenged for design talent. You know, every design VP I talk to says, I want more productivity out of my engineers. I need them to do more, and that's where I think the opportunities lie.
Okay. I'm going to take a point that you touched on and ask Irfan, but before we go there, so the question I'm going to ask you is, you know, on one hand you have as an entrepreneur in this area, on one hand you have the EDA, the other hand you have customers that can just take an LLM and do your own stuff, okay? So on this, hold this thought,
okay.
I just want to ask the organizers, I thought we have 45 minutes. I see the clock running. So tell me when I need to stop. So I'm going to ask this question and then open to the audience for questions. So prepare your questions.
Happy to answer that. I don't think the pitch of the startup should be like we're going to like replace the legacy companies such as Cadence or Synopsys. The pitch should be we're competing with OpenAI and NVIDIAs of the world. Because if you have the AI that could design the chip that could power the AI itself, and instead of focusing on, some companies focus on designing the chip and others focus on designing the tools that design the chip. And I think that's going to shortcut a lot of the existing processes. And at that point, I don't think the competition is with the EDA tools, is with the guys who are making most of the dollars in the stack, which is OpenAI and NVIDIA. And in terms of the EDA companies and the LLMs that you could just like use off the shelf, I think it's smart to use off-the-shelf things to just get into the market super fast. But I do think that there is a limit on how much foundation model and reasoning models are going to be able to do reasoning on type of data in this domain. A lot of these models are generative models, but then a lot of the tasks in the EDA industry is actually optimization tasks. So as of now, I haven't seen anybody to come up with models that could do both optimization and generation at the same time, that could do types of reasoning that are not just linearly decomposable, the same way that you see with chain of thoughts or reasoning models. So I think that the next cutting edge thing that's going to happen is actually moving away from the autoregressive transformer models to something that could do both optimization, generation, deal with a lot of system level type of reasoning for electronics and semiconductor design. And that's one of the areas that we focus on.
Any questions from the audience? You have a mic in the back. I don't know if you can try without, but maybe you should go to the mic.
I'll just continue to that thought in the meantime. We are investors in OpenAI, and as much as we want, I think that's an open question if it'll be one large model to solve everything, or will it be, GPT-5, GPT-6 just getting better multimodal and reasoning, and agents checking their answer and solving for model steering, model inspection, in conjunction with the area or the data for that particular task and solving it end to end. So we think there's still opportunity, but yes, it's a very good question. It's an open question.
Well, I'll do one more comment on that. So there are other areas where you see new types of foundational models, weather forecasting, for example, right? Where there are very different types of foundational models. So it's certainly an opportunity, and that's something where innovation is required. Of course, we as a community, and this is from the technical side, we want to get as much mileage out of the large models that exist already with fine tuning or whatever. But there's certainly opportunities to go domain specific too, to your point. We see that in other areas.
Yes, Sandeep.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sandeep Srinivasan from Verify. So I have a question for the gentleman from Cadence. So, and perhaps we've met before. The linchpin of EDA is static timing, right? So if somebody says, I want to replace Cadence or Synopsys, do you think it's realistic to come up with a static timer today that would be sign-off quality? and having worked on this for many years, that's the reason I asked this question. Yeah.
So I think what you're asking is, how do you get trust, right? At the end of the day, static timing is about trust, and how do you get chip designers to trust? So I think, first of all, to answer your question directly, I think it is very challenging to come up with a new static timer, because why? People don't need a new one. There are two which work very well, and they're both well proven. Unless you can do something more, there is no opportunity. But the question is really, it's one of the biggest questions on all of the AI-based generative techniques is verification. And if you're doing a design, how do you verify? Okay, you can generate a spec for a test bench. How do you know it's correct? And the answer today is to put a person in the loop so that they can do some verification. So it's an interesting challenge, and that's true for code generation too. So it's a general challenge for AI, right? You guys know that.
And it goes back to the question whether you're replacing or you're writing on top or complementing or optimizing flows and et cetera. Maybe you'd not replace that, but you can do something else. I can hear you. I don't know if you can, but it's okay. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, please.
What do you think about open source strategies?
Speak to the mic. We can hear.
What do you think about open source strategies for startups? Vinod's company is OpenAI. Are we going to have an open EDA system? There is already TensorRent. Jim Keller is big on that. RISC-V ecosystem is fairly open. Is the big disruption going to be open EDA? And how are the VCs ready for this kind of investment?
So I think, I will rephrase your question. So I said before that there is the competition from the incumbents, there is the competition from the open LLMs, and the gentleman is asking, what about open EDA? And there are initiatives in open EDA. So and how the VCs see this as a threat?
Are you guys ready to invest in that kind of strategy?
Yes, absolutely. We've invested that for regular software engineering development. We were the earliest investors in GitLab. So yes, absolutely. If there's a good pitch, happy to always hear it. My email is kg@khoslaventures.com.
Okay, let me move to a couple of last questions. And I think, Brian, getting back to something that you said before, it's still early days. We have seed money, maybe we have Series A money, but not serious money, okay, invested into that. So do you think this is a buzz, a FUD that, in a couple of years is going to be gone, or it's real, this trend?
I have no idea. I think it's interesting enough that I'm paying attention. I think that with all of these things, what you're ultimately looking for is a team that has a really strong perspective that educates you about a possibility in the market that you as an investor are not going to already know in advance is the way to go about it. And so I would put myself in the camp of curious, not high conviction that this is an area where it's going to lead to huge outcomes right now for all the reasons that we're talking about. So it's TBD.
Kanu, what do you think? Because you are invested.
Yes. I've already done a few investments, and like I said, our fund is the main fund is about $3 billion. So we are investing with the conviction that these will be large outcomes. We have invested in ChipStack. This is automating the task of a formal verification engineer. We have invested in Asterisk, which is automating the place and route for analog designs. Yes, we absolutely have high conviction. If you just look at from a timing point of view, companies like Cursor, of course, you have to get a lot of things right, the timing right, the capability, the product shape and form, the community build right. But they went from 0 to 100 million in like a couple of, less than a year or something. I think there's opportunity now with this new paradigm to just create a different offering altogether and get people's mind share and budget.
So I want to ask a last question, each one of you from your different perspectives. If there are people in the audience either already engaged or thinking in starting a startup in this space, what will be your advice? Maybe Irfan and Vinod as someone that has done this, Vinod also as someone a part of the EDA establishment, and the VCs from the perspective that what you want to see in such teams that come to you. So Vinod, let's start with you.
You want to start? Okay. So I think I would go back to what I said earlier, which is two things. Don't try to solve a problem that's already really well solved, because you probably won't do it as efficiently. The second thing is really look at the opportunity of how you can make enough money in that field, and that's usually by doing something different than what we do today. So inventing a better spanner isn't probably going to get you that, but replacing the person who's wielding the spanner with something that does that job automatically may do that, right? So I think that's my 2 cents.
Irfan?
Yeah, I would say don't lose your faith, my friend. It's a hard one, but just thinking from first principles, it's a big market. When you look at the top 10 companies, by the market cap, like 5, 6 of them are hardware-first companies: Apple, NVIDIA, Broadcom, TSMC, Tesla, and it's a very complex process. So just think from first principles, and there's going to be a day that your work will be rewarded.
Kanu?
So I'm very bullish with everything around AI and agents and our bets in OpenAI and other foundation companies, that this is going to continue to change how things are done, even in chip design, in semiconductor design. My guidance, my advice would be identify the risk retirement order, right? Like which risks do we want to take on with which round of funding, and then attract the best talent you can to go after those, de-risking those risks. And then that's the only way to build startups. Startups are meant to be hard, which is why the reward at the end of the day is also very, very large. Thanks.
Ryan?
I don't think I have anything that's specific to EDA. I think that the level of customer obsession, team obsession that a founder needs to be able to be successful because of how competitive it is extremely high. And all the founders that I've ever seen really succeed are compelled to enter into that market with like zero question. And so if there's any hesitation, I would say skip it. And if you absolutely must do it, then I think it's about what are the first principles of what are the customer needs that you believe you can do 10 times better or 100 times better than what their current opportunities are. How do you get the best people in the world to join you on that mission, and go for it.
So there is a last question. Quick. Okay.
So I have a quick question about the workflow before talking more about business, funding, and technology. So what changes will the AI bring to the current workflow of EDA or chip design?
Is the question what challenges it brings?
To the flow?
Workflow.
The working flow?
Workflow?
Yeah. Workflow.
I'm not sure. So let's take this offline. Okay, you're welcome to approach the bench, for lack of a better word.
I have an answer.
One more person waiting there for a long time.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, thanks. So someone on the panel made the observation that the new silicon engineers that are just now entering the industry have a higher expectation for the tools that they use. Maybe they wrote code in VS Code or Cursor when they were in school. And they come into the industry and they're shocked by the tools that are available to them. So I'm wondering, for the investors on the panel, for chip companies that you guys have backed or have done diligence with, the new wave of chip companies, what is their thought process around building tools internally for themselves, and maybe also vendor selection? And is that any different from kind of the incumbent chip companies? And then maybe for Irfan as well, for you, are you guys having more success with the earlier stage chip companies versus kind of more legacy companies?
Great
Thanks.
question.
I'll share just a couple of anecdotes. I mean, it shocks all the young engineers at Etched, for instance, how long it takes to just install a particular solution from Cadence or Synopsys. It's like totally mind-boggling to them. They all go to the LLMs all the time to accelerate their work. And it could be from a random thing of moving things into Google Sheets to dropping it into Cursor to pull a report to experimenting with. Every time I share a tool with the team at Etch, they first just try, can I do this with an LLM? Is always the first default. And a lot of the time they can, to your comment earlier. But they also do recognize, I think anyone who's that today, the only way to build a chip, at least it's certainly a high performance chip, is in partnership with Cadence and or Synopsys. So it's not like they're naive to that fact. They just are looking for alternatives as well.
Any other comments? What I can comment, I meet a lot of different customers. I'm here visiting in the Valley, meeting customers. I get the kinds of questions about how can AI improve my process, my efficiency. I get this from big companies, from small companies, all over the place. Now, it is true that an NVIDIA will develop some internal tools, but I think that most normal companies, including big companies, will not be able to develop the tools, train the models, and et cetera. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's,
I think from our perspective, Voltai, we basically have an engagement with most of the largest semiconductor companies in the world. And our focus has just been on the big guys and instead of the smaller startups. And the way that we have had them to adopt the kind of tools that we're building is simple word FOMO. It's the AI wave, either you're on top of it or you're under it. And then these companies understand that they want to adopt these workflows, and surprisingly, they're quite open to take it in, even the big companies.
So with that, I want to wrap up. I want to say that, Brian said that if anyone here really feels that that was something that he must do, go for it. You have VC support here. You have EDA corporate support. You have other peers that you can talk to. Go do it, and let's hope that, to tell the truth, I thought that I must have this panel at this DAC because it's something that needs to be discussed as part of DAC, as you guys know. But let's hope that next year we're going to have this landscape map full of new ideas, innovative ideas, disruptive ideas. And let's hope that we have more VCs coming here because that's where the new wave of innovation is gonna come from. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to the audience. Have a great rest of DAC. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us here today at this session. We have another session starting in about 15 minutes. It is accelerating tape-out by months with cost-effective per-minute EDA cloud licensing. Starts at 3:30 in about 15 minutes or so.